Hello, and welcome to episode 1 of the Better Death Collective podcast with your hosts Ed Bixby and myself, Matt Connell. The Better Death Collective brings together every variety of death care provider, from funeral directors to florists to family members caring for a dying loved one, to talk about important issues and to ask the questions necessary for a better overall approach towards death and all that comes with it. After all, better death care takes a community. To kick things off today, we'll be getting to know a bit about our very own Ed Bixby. Ed is a well-known green cemeterian, owning and operating 12 green and hybrid cemeteries on both coasts, and now in the Midwest as well. His journey from being a contractor in southern New Jersey to nationwide authority on green burial is a tale of stars aligning and an abundance of hard work and determination. His role as head of the Green Burial Council has helped pave the way for other fledgling cemeterians, such as myself, to go forth and follow their calling. And, while Ed may be the guru of green burial, he's also a pretty nice guy to boot. So, please, enjoy the show. Yeah, this is it, Ed. Here we are.
How you doing, Matt? Yeah, thank you for the introduction, and looking forward to having a conversation today to explain to the viewers, who we are and why we're here and why we want to bring good information to them.
Yeah, this has been a long time coming, something we've been talking about for a while. We just had to get everything in order and kind of figure out a strategy, and it's almost kind of surreal that we're actually here talking now.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. I mean, I think, first and foremost, what we should do is talk to the viewers a little bit about who we are, not to toot our own horns, but just to give them the confidence that we know what we're talking about and we're here for a good reason, and get them engaged and excited, as to what's to come in the future when it comes to these conversations. So, if you'd like me to go ahead, Matt, and I'll talk a little bit about
yeah,
myself
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
initially. So, just to the viewer who may not know who I am, my name is Ed Bixby, and I'm the owner and operator of Destination Destiny Memorials. We have eco-friendly cemeteries across the country, from the East Coast to the West Coast. Matt will talk a little bit about himself, but Matt is my partner in this, not only in the podcast but in some of these properties. Uh, I've been
Yeah,
involved in
we've
this
known each
business.
other for a few years now, huh? It's been probably 3 years
Yeah,
since
absolutely.
you and I
Yeah, I
met.
mean, yeah, it's been a few years. It feels like time flies pretty quickly, I guess they say when you're
Yeah,
having fun.
say that
But
again. Lots of adventure, huh?
yeah, on both sides. Yeah, I know. We have definitely been making some ground. Um, but just so everyone knows, we've been heavily involved. Not only with boots on the ground operation, but also within the field of education and leadership. I'm the Green Burial Council president. The Green Burial Council is an organization that sets the standards for eco-friendly funeral options, and Matt, he also volunteers with the association as well. Matt, if you want to tell everybody what you're doing, so they have a little idea with the cemeteries and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. This is something that's completely new to me. I'm very green when it comes to green burial, I guess you could say. Um, but how it started off for me, I was sitting in corporate America, sitting in a cubicle, and I, was not satisfied. It's a classic story. And I'm racking my brain trying to think of ways to escape. And it was the strangest thing. I came across a TED Talks on alternative burials, and was like, wow, this is fascinating stuff. It really piqued my interest. And the very next video that came on after the TED Talks was the story of Steelmantown Cemetery with Ed Bixby, talking about the importance of green burial, how to dig a proper grave in a green cemetery, and just the basics of green burial and why it's so important. And let me tell you, man, it hit me. It hit me like the angels singing and the ray of sunlight through the window was just, it was a powerful moment for me. And I'm driving home, and that's all I can picture in my head is this is what I meant to do. And I was forward from that point on. And talking to my wife, and she says, "Oh, well, you should just call him. Just call Ed." Well, so that's what I did. And guess what? Ed answered the phone. Not only did Ed answer the phone, but he, asked me questions. He wanted to know what I was trying to do. And he was so helpful. I mean, truly helpful. He was willing to help me get started. And Ed has, helped many, many people. He's a I guess a jack of all trades. He's a busy guy. So for him to take the time and for you, I should say, for you to take the time to help me was that much more fuel to my fire. It was like, wow, this guy is the authority, if one of the authorities on green burial and natural burial in America, if not the world. So this was really a big deal to me, and it was like, wow, man, this is something that I can do. This is achievable. And long story short, we've had quite a few adventures, trying to find the right places. But most importantly, Ed and I are now business partners. And here we are, 3-ish years later. We're starting a cemetery here in Minnesota, in Barnum, Minnesota, which is a beautiful area. But we can get more into that later. But I think, Ed, you are the expert here. You are a professional. You've been doing this for what, 13 years now?
Since 2008. Yeah, so we're getting actually close to
14.
15. Yeah, yeah.
So
And thank
14, 15 years.
yeah, 14 or 15 years, and I appreciate the kind words, but I think what the important message here is to everyone, when Matt did contact me, just like he had mentioned, so many others have, I give information freely because this is how education and growth is inspired. And I saw something in Matt that I see in many people, that he had the desire to make this work for all the right reasons. So that made all the sense in the world for me to want to help him. And then our friendship grew into something more. But the exciting thing about that is the reason that I had reached out to Matt concerning the Better Death Collective when we created this space was that we want to serve the public and the people the same way. We want to give this back to you as well, meaning the viewers, the listeners. Uh, we are in the eco-friendly funeral world, but we're also respectful to the fact that we live in America, and we have freedom of choice here. So we don't ever want to be disrespectful to anyone's choices. But by creating a forum like this, we are creating a space that we can actually talk about these things and help better inform you and make you understand that maybe death, ultimately, of course, we can't avoid it, is a far less scary place. That our end is the beginning of something new, and those who we leave behind with a better understanding of why we've made these choices have a greater acceptance of our passing and actually realize that we've become something else. So, Matt and I, we intend on continuing to create educational opportunities, videos, podcasts weekly. And we want to reach out to you, the viewer, so you have a good understanding. So this very first episode really is just to familiarize yourself with us and what we do. And we're going to talk about a few topics today that might be interesting. Do you think that I'm in line with that assessment, Matt?
Absolutely, 100%. I think, you know, death is not something, at least in the United States, it's not something that's usually talked about openly. It's something that's very hush hush, and all too often it's something that's talked about when it's too late, or when it's being rushed, or and it's not just the case for the general public. There's perhaps a lack of communication amongst death care providers, to where we could be sharing ideas, having discussions, asking important questions without drama, without making it into a problem. We can show some love to one another. We all have this death care provider thing in common. And so, what has been your experience with that as far as communication amongst death care providers? Is this something that's lacking, do you
Yeah,
think?
I think absolutely. I mean, in modern culture, unfortunately, the industry itself has been made to look creepy and weird because of things like The Walking Dead and television shows, and the funeral industry has become a place that people initially think of it being morbid, other than realizing it's
Hmm.
a true necessity and something that should be addressed. I mean, just so that the viewers know, who I am and why I'm involved, in this movement. I'm no different than Matt. I'm no different than you. I did not choose this profession; it kind of chose me.
Hmm.
And
I was going to ask you about that.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
a good story.
yeah. It's I'm a real estate broker and a developer by trade. 30 years in the business, back in southern New Jersey. Very successful with that. I worked very hard for that success. But in 2007, I had a family burial ground. My family had come to this country a very long time ago in 1680, and that burial ground had fallen into someone else's hands and had fallen into disrepair. And my brother had been buried there and had bothered my mother for a very long time. So what I had done was I had approached the owner just as a human being, just like everyone listening to this, and I said,
Hmm.
"Listen, can you clean the place up?" And the individual had known me my entire life. He was a local funeral director, and he had said to me, and he was 87. He said, "How
Yeah.
about I give it to you?" And if I were to say to anyone on this phone call, "Would you like to take the responsibility of a cemetery?" You might think initially, maybe I would, but I probably don't want to have that responsibility. But I,
Right.
because of my family, decided that it was the right thing to do. And the reason I'm telling the viewers this is that, I want you to understand that, uh, I knew nothing about this industry. I was not schooled in it. It was not a conversation I even had myself. It's something that I kind of stepped into and realized that not only is this an important conversation for everyone to be having, but it's also a way to make yourself really understand and feel better about death itself and the life that was lived. So I took that gentleman up on his offer, and I took the cemetery. I cleaned it up, and quite frankly, I had no idea what I would do with it other than mow the grass. I did not take it to be a quote unquote cemeterian. Um, but then I read an article about 6 months after I had purchased it, or $1. When I say purchase, to make it legal, you have to exchange
Right.
money. But I read an article about natural burial in the Atlantic City Press, and that's kind of when the stars aligned. And a lot of the prerequisites, like no traditional burials taking place adjacent to state forest, I met a lot of the requirements of this fledgling organization called the Green Burial Council. And I contacted them and talked to them a little bit and realized, wow, this is something that can benefit society. And my intent with my facility was to create a recreational green space for the living, to create a trail system for people to come out and enjoy, and bring their families, their dog, ride their bike, and find new life for the cemetery itself. So that's what I did, and I think that's the vision as to what maybe others listening to this initial call might be. But we also don't want to forget the other people in this conversation and in this industry that might be able to enlighten all of us. As I was enlightened by my experience, we all don't understand all the nuts and bolts and the workings of other funeral services. So we can enlighten others by bringing those people forward. And maybe you don't have to agree, with possibly their practices or their beliefs, but with the enlightenment of understanding what they're doing, it may change your perspective as to what that means to people and why they do it.
Yeah. Now you had mentioned. First of all, I should say just to throw this in there. I have seen Steelman Town Cemetery. I've actually been there. And for those of you who are unfamiliar, it's Ed Cemetery is right near the Jersey Shore, and he's in the woods, a very rural part of New Jersey, and it is absolutely beautiful. You walk into that place and you can just feel the history. You can picture the what it must have looked like in the early 1700s. And what you've done with the place is absolutely amazing, and it's what inspired me. Part of what inspired me. But when you mentioned when you first got started, you didn't really have any plans to be doing anything like this. Now you were a contractor and a developer. What what were your views on death before that? Before you were kind of thrown into this whole industry?
Well, kind of ironically, I really didn't give it much thought. I mean, probably like most people. I probably was thinking more in the traditional sense, even though certainly I don't think I personally would want to be embalmed, nor would I want to be cremated. Uh, but I guess I never gave it any more thought than that. So I never really had a final
Right.
understanding of what I wanted. And I would probably imagine that the majority of the people today, people that we may not reach initially until they can be enlightened by something that we're doing, feel the same way. It's just not a bridge that they have crossed yet. But what it's done for me, and I think yourself, Matt, and what it can do for our viewers is empower us as human beings to actually make a difference and institute change. Because as being a layman going into this, certainly everyone knows how to, or most people know how to mow a lawn. I mean, it's not like about maintaining something. It's about creating a space.
Something deeper.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about creating a space that feels good, that serves a greater purpose, and that also receives respect and dignity. Because unfortunately, in modern day practices and with people not understanding, uh, you know, grief in many senses of the word, they become places that people don't go back to, and then they become forgotten. And we intend, you and I, in the Better Death Collective, intend on changing that. We want to bring it back to a
Hmm.
place it once was. So,
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
prior.
That's something that I didn't hadn't really thought of that much. Maybe, just in the back of my mind, but really, yes. The conventional cemetery, the image of the conventional cemetery doesn't invoke happiness. It's not something that people think about and are uplifted. It's usually kind of a downer, a lot of times. It's not. But what you're doing, what we're doing is changing that. Like you said, somebody may be hesitant to come back to visit a loved one just because of the vibes, the feelings that they have experienced. But this is different. This environment, it's a different type of environment. It's a brighter environment, more uplifting and more. It's a gentler environment for people who are grieving, in my opinion.
Oh, well, absolutely. And I think what the viewer needs to understand is just so we can give them a broader perspective as to what we're speaking about when it comes to natural burial. And the grief and the hurt a lot of times with a funeral comes from the fact that you take your loved one and you put them in someone's care, and then you kind of lose, or you feel as if you've lost control of that individual, that you don't have the right to them anymore, and that they're whisked away, and the last time you see them might be in a cemetery where you don't feel as if they belong to you anymore. And what's
Mm,
most important about natural burial, and what people need to understand, is that as much of the wonderful benefit of the environmental part, that's not the true meaning to me of a natural burial. The true meaning is to care for your loved one in death as you would care for them in life. So when I say that, what I mean by that is that to be able to bathe your loved one, dress your loved one, and not that's not for everybody, but for anyone who would want to do that. Bring your loved one to the site, carry them to the grave site, place them on it, lower them down, backfill the grave, be surrounded by life in the experience of death. Uh, by giving this final act of kindness, it's the final uh, goodbye and celebration of a life that was lived.
mm.
And people will say to me all the time that they don't understand how you do it. Well, it's very simple to do, and it's very easy to understand once you experience it. So we have to get people inspired to want to experience that, because people don't realize that we all have the ability to care for our loved ones in death, because we did it for millions of years. It's only been the last
Hmm.
150 years that we've become disconnected to this idea.
Right.
And
Yeah.
right, and you went out and you dug a grave in Steelmantown, and everyone, the viewers
Yes, I did.
that are listening, a little bit of a rite of passage that we have, at Steelmantown when we're creating new spaces, is that people come out and they actually experience the feeling of opening a gravesite and understanding that. And Matt, I can let you give a little bit of experience as to how that made you feel in the moment.
Oh man, it's something that it really does need to be experienced. It's something it's a beautiful thing. It's hard work, but it's hard work. You you're not just digging a hole. You're not just out there just shoveling away. You are digging a an eternal resting place for a human being that had a life, that has loved ones, that has um, feelings and memories, and you are caring for them by digging that hole. And that's digging that grave by hand. When you're in there, I mean, you want it to look like Michelangelo dug that grave. You want it to be smooth, perfectly rectangular. It has to be beautiful, as if it was almost as if it was your own grave. And that's what I was thinking as I was digging. I was thinking, how would I want this grave to look? If I was standing over my somebody digging my own grave, what would I expect? It probably would have had to have been 6 inches longer, but you know, I'm a bit of a string bean. But yeah, it's a beautiful experience, and it took. I was lucky because when I was there in New Jersey, it was about 60 degrees, and it was perfect. That's perfect digging weather. Because it took me about 6 hours. I think it was
Yeah.
about. Um, and yeah, my back was sore, but I felt a sense of accomplishment that I haven't felt very often in my life. It was something truly beautiful. I'll never forget it. We had a little incident though. My wife's gonna kill me. Uh, she actually she fell in to the grave.
Yes, you did.
She fell hard, like she just wasn't paying attention. I was just digging away, and next thing I know, she's falling in. She's on top of me. I'm like, what is going on? Oh, well, Kristen fell in. That was yeah. But then she recovers. We get her out, just brush her off. Okay, that happens. But then she ends up twisting her ankle out in the woods later on, like completely separate injury, completely separate. Had nothing. One had nothing to do with the other. It was just two mishaps in the same afternoon. But yeah, it was a beautiful experience in a really beautiful setting, and I had never been to New Jersey before. That was my first experience ever in New Jersey, was digging a grave. So that'll New Jersey will always have a place in my heart.
Right.
But as far as our current endeavor and our past attempts at establishing cemeteries, which we can maybe get into later, I think those are stories that need to be told. I don't want to, you know, I don't want to talk bad about anybody. I don't want to cause problems, but I think it's something that is should be addressed. Ed and I have had experiences in the past where, in the recent past, where we've attempted to kind of take these old abandoned cemeteries under our wing, and we've run into some problems. I feel like those should probably be separate podcasts, but we've had issues. And Ed, you've had I should go back a little bit. We are continuing to move forward. It's not we haven't been stopped. They're going to have to try harder to do that. But you've had a victory in that regard. Can you touch a little bit on Purisima Cemetery and tell us a little bit about that story? I think that's a really cool story. That.
Yeah, well, I mean, so Matt touched on, on some of the things that we've been doing, and we've educated people and myself across the country as to how to reclaim historical burial grounds and give them back the dignity and repurpose them for natural burial purposes. I had I have now 12 different locations across the country, and soon to have another one.
Is it 12?
Yeah,
Wow, that's
yeah,
awesome.
and some of them have been harder than others. Some have been very easy, but out in Purisima, near San Francisco in California, we reclaimed a historical burial ground totally legally, and then we had some opposition when it came to the actual governmental agency. But that was because there was misunderstanding as to what cemetery law was, and that'll be something that'll be
Mm.
a real big uh, topic in the future, I'm sure, with some of our podcasts that we have to help some of you individuals, you fledgling cemeterians, to understand how to do this. But long story short, the in life, everyone has misunderstandings, and sometimes you agree, and sometimes you don't. Sometimes you have to agree to disagree. But at the end of the day, when you become involved with something like this, once you put a shovel in the ground, you are forever tied to that property, and you have an obligation not only to the individuals that were buried there prior, but to the families that you're serving from that point forward. And ultimately, what ends up happening is that sometimes people will look at you and say, why is this individual doing what they're doing? And why are they here? But over time, when they see that you're doing good work and you're helping people and the community's embracing it, then their attitude changes. So that's kind of what happened there. Initially, there was,
Mm-hmm.
what is this guy from New Jersey doing in California? And then the attitude was, wow,
Mm-hmm.
look what he's done. And to back up a little bit, just so everyone understands, the reason that I have personally expanded Steelman Town and created an organization called Destination Destiny is to
Mm-hmm.
further the movement itself. I was burying people in New Jersey from all over this country, and it made no logical sense. So from 2008 until 2016, we were very successful because of the proximity to major metropolitan cities in the Northeast, like Philadelphia and New York City and Baltimore and Washington. But I'm burying people from Seattle and from California, and I kept saying to
Cool.
myself, this is strange. I don't understand why this is happening. I kind of knew why it was happening because we needed more facilities and they didn't exist. So I decided to create facilities outside of my region so people didn't have to do that anymore. But at the same time, to help educate and bring people to the point where they can embrace the concept and we can empower them to do the same. So through the Better Death Collective and through Matt and I speaking with you and bringing other people onto, our podcasts, we hope to enlighten you and empower you and your community to do the same, because our intentions, Matt and my intention, is not to own 1,000 cemeteries, because that would be insane, and that's not what we want.
Right.
We want to have healthy, happy environments, not only for the communities but for the world, and that's why we've decided to create these conversations. And when I was speaking about, and when Matt was speaking about his experience digging the grave, uh, I had mentioned it's in our DNA, and it really is. And once that box is unlocked, if you're able to experience a natural burial, and how cathartic it is, and how life changing it is, in the way that death feels far less scary when you're actually part of the
Mhm.
process. Uh, you're doing something big. You're changing the world, and you know, Matt and I are by no means, you know, I mean, I guess we could call ourselves experts, but not really. I choose to learn something every day of the week. That's the only way you can be. Uh,
More than the average Joe, maybe, but I definitely wouldn't consider myself an expert. I would look to you as the expert. I think more so me. I probably could be a cemetery law attorney at this point.
yeah, absolutely
I've read them all,
right.
at least in Minnesota.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I have not experienced the, working directly with families, speaking directly, and actually, being with people, side by side with them at their most difficult moments of their lives. That is something. I don't want to say that intimidates me, but I recognize the importance of that task. You're not just simply standing there. You are an important person in that time and place to those families, which is strange to me because I know a little bit about your background. You've got a boxing background. I've seen your gym. You've got the punching bag and stuff, and you're an athlete. You are now in a much gentler role, and it seems to me like it's a very good fit for you. Like you are, I have not actually seen you, in that situation where there's an actual funeral happening, but I imagine that you're very fit for that role.
Well, yeah, and we all are, and until we actually experience it, that's the moment that we realize that we can do it. And you're right. I mean, my philosophy in life has always been, to bring good karma upon yourself by not doing, bad things to others. And you know,
Hmm.
being a boxer, the one thing that you do understand is that you must respect the individual across the ring from you, and you're not there to knock them down and hurt them. You don't want them to be disabled, or you have a lot of respect and
Sure.
dignity. Yeah,
Ideally,
no, absolutely.
you
I
know.
mean, so dealing with families, has been probably the most rewarding part of what I do. That's what made me passionate about it, was to understand that you were forming this unique relationship with strangers that would last a lifetime. They would never forget their day at
Mhm.
Steelmantown or Purisima or any of the others, and they would never forget you, and they would never forget how you helped them through the hardest time of their life. So you're actually becoming
Mhm.
almost like a part of their family, and that's what needs to be understood by everyone listening, is that by actively being part of this, it's part of the healing process. And the one thing that I do want to make mention of is, because we've talked, and of course this episode is an introduction, to who we are and why we do what we do. But as we move
Mhm.
along, you'll understand that others in the funeral industry, that's absolutely why they're there. They're there to help you through the hardest time of your life. We're there, me and Matt, and all of all the people who believe in natural burial, to enlighten them to something new and something more. But actually, when I say new, it's something very old. It's just something that,
Yeah,
yeah,
ancient.
ancient,
Yeah.
but forgotten. Because, for instance, and I'll tell everyone a small story just so they can paint a picture in their mind. My very first burial. We were called up. It was an astrophysicist from Princeton, New Jersey. Uh, you know, they had no relationship to Steelmantown. They just wanted a natural burial, and we had a natural burial ground. And at that point, we had become certified by the Green Burial Council as one. So it was our very first burial. You know, like I said to everyone here, I did not choose this industry, so I only did what I felt as if was right at the time. You know, what came from the heart. So you know, I said to my grave diggers, who were my masons, who dug footings for my foundations, you know, would you like to dig a grave? They said, yeah, sure, absolutely, why not? And the reason I explain this is so you can understand what this feels like. So when they showed up, and you know, at the cemetery itself, you know, I allowed them to carry their loved one back to the gravesite, because why would I not do that? That person, you know, is their loved one. They should have the right to do so. They brought him back. They placed him on the grave, and as everything unfolded, and this was my very first burial, we watched that family run through the gamut of emotions. You know, happiness, anger, sadness, uh, and as this was unfolding, I remember looking at my masons, which were my grave diggers, and they did not know this person, but there was tears streaming down their faces, and it was so impactful to them, probably thinking of their own loved ones and how they might have wanted to have
Sure.
treated them at their passing. That's when the light bulb went off, and that's when I realized that, you know what, this is something much more than just burying somebody in the woods. You know, this is about changing society's views, stewarding our earth for future generations, and bringing us back to basics. So, but the funeral providers that have chosen the industry and chosen traditional methods because that's what is provided, when they're enlightened to the benefits, not only as to how it feels, but how they're viewed by the families themselves, it converts them instantly. So we're not trying to sit here and
Mhm.
say to this group right now, to our viewers, that hey, natural burial is the only way to go. And but as you learn more through us, and you hear people that we bring on, and we talk to other people, even in the traditional funeral industry, it'll open your eyes to different options, and make you have a greater perspective as to why we do what we do.
And there is a lot of alternative ways to deal with human remains out in the media right now. I mean, it's actually pretty big news. You know, human composting. Everybody seems to know what human composting is. Everybody's, you know, many people have heard of you know, using mushrooms, you know, electrolysis, or hydrolysis. I'm not even saying it correctly, but you know, and not to say that any of these ways are worse or better or anything like that. They are they're new. They're kind of cutting edge technology and methodology. But what this is, like you've mentioned before, green burial is something that's very ancient. And as far as um, overall impact on the environment and you know, the spiritual connection to the actual process, there's really nothing like it. Nothing can really compare in my eyes. I don't know if you feel the same
Yeah,
way.
well, you know, absolutely. I mean, to each his own. What I believe in, you know, when it comes to blue sky thinking, and that's exactly what it is. You know, things like, you know, natural organic reduction, aquamation, you know, mycelium coffins, you know, which would be mushroom infused coffins for fungi. Uh, that's what makes the conversation interesting, more palatable. People can talk about these new things because, quite frankly, they may find that it's odd. So it ends up in the newspapers or on TV. Ultimately, you know, it's to each his own. You know, we look to transparency. For instance, with the Green Burial Council, and a lot of the reasons that the Better Death Collective was created is that we at the council, because we represent eco-friendly burial, we receive a lot of inquiries concerning newer products and newer developments. So we are fairly schooled as to
Mm-hmm.
what they are and what the processes are. And of course, you know, they want to get to our opinion on that. Our opinion can only be based on what we know. But as long as the providers of these processes are completely transparent as to what they're doing, then people can make wise, educated decisions. And that's what's important. If there's any gray areas or any smoke and mirrors, Most certainly I can't get behind it, and the council couldn't get behind it. And we can only give our opinion as to what it is. But for instance, with natural organic reduction, and that's a very large conversation, and be great. We'll have this conversation in the future. But there's a process to basically compost a human being. And, if
Hmm.
someone's saying to you that, and some of the claims have been that, oh, grandma, will become a few bags of topsoil and it seems like it's very beautiful. And why not do this? Because we're running out of cemetery space. Now, I can't agree with those claims only because we know that the process is a little different than what people may envision it. So, as long as you're explaining the process correctly and people understand what the end result is, and you can do that feeling confident with your decision, then we can support that decision. So, we want to bring people onto this platform, not only to ask questions, but to bring those providers there so they can explain their process. And there is no gray area because traditional funeral industry suffered greatly over the years because they said that they took advantage of people at their time of need. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that there was no conversations being had, and people make rash decisions when they're upset and they're grief stricken. So, if you did
Hmm.
something that maybe you otherwise wouldn't have done because you believed that you wanted to do the best for your family member, it's understandable that you may be upset that you overspent, but you can't. A lot of times you can't villainize the person who sold you something that you wanted. So we need to have these conversations so people can have better understandings as to what all this means, so that when they do walk into there, right, Matt? I mean, I think that represents what we
Yeah,
want to do.
absolutely. I mean, we have to remember we live in the United States of America. This is a capitalist society. They're not, what's happening in the conventional funeral industry is not, it's not malicious. It's not anything like that. They have to put food on their table. Um, but I think that what needs to happen is that it needs to be done as gently as humanly possible. We all have to play the game. We don't have a choice. How do we do so with the softest possible impact, on and not just the environment, but like you mentioned, cost, is a major concern, and I know it is for me. So yeah, it's I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's something that I think could be avoided, with pre-planning. First of all, I hear a lot of people say, I've heard old timers in my own world, family members say, I don't care what you do with me. I'll be dead, it won't matter. And it's like, well, it does matter. It really actually does matter. It matters for us. It matters for the ones that are still left behind. The impact on the environment, again, with the cost. I think that is a good way to avoid problems when it comes to how dealing with the death of a loved one. I mean, am I
Oh,
right on that?
absolutely. I mean, the key is to a sign of intelligence is to know when you're wrong, and all of us are wrong. If you're too stubborn to admit it, then that's being stupid, right? So we're not here to tell people that you're wrong. We're just here to enlighten and educate you in a way you can understand that. Like Matt said, cemeteries are for the living. Of course, it's for the dead that are interred, but it's really for the living. So, what is the experience or the legacy you're
Hmm.
leaving behind? That's the most important part of this. And to have and you don't have to be an environmentalist to understand the benefits of having a softer footprint, like or lighter footprint. I'll be quite frank with with all the listeners. I mean, uh, like Matt had said, you have to keep the lights on. We need business providers, funeral providers, to assist our families at their time of need. It's just that we need people to understand the impacts of what they're doing and how that impact and not only impacts the environment but impacts the family. So by creating a forum, a space that we can discuss these things, people will start to not only want to talk about it, but they'll start to say to themselves, I want to be sure that I get what I want. And I want to be sure that my family feels this way when I'm gone. So that's why this conversation is so critically important. And then also it'll give you the opportunity to look at those funeral providers who've chosen this path in life and realize that not only have they understood that there's a new way and that they're embracing it, but they really are there to help you. You know, they're not helping themselves to the money in your pocket. They're helping themselves into your heart, helping you during this time. So, you know, I look forward to our future guests because we're going to have a lot of great guests that are going to be able to bring a lot of insight, and we want you as the viewer, to be engaged and reach out to us, like us on social media, want to be part of our conversation, give us good ideas, ask us to ask the hard questions, and we'll do so, and we'll grow, right, Matt?
Absolutely. I just want to be completely clear. I am a layman in this world. I am not the expert at all. I have learned a lot, and I'm continuing to learn. But my hope is that I'm going to learn from all of you, from all of the people out there who are asking these questions and who have had experiences, because it's not just about death care providers sharing experiences. I think that that while that is very important, I've realized recently that we are all death care providers. It's part of being human. Um, we will all most likely eventually have to face the death of a loved one, to care for a loved one who is dying, dealing with trauma, with grief. That is something that is a human experience, and I hope to hear people's experience. What helped you? What didn't help you? What problems did you face, and how did you overcome them? If you did, that's what I need. That's what I need to be successful, to help push this green burial movement forward, and not just green burial movement, just better death, a better way of dying, a better way of dealing with death. And that's why I think that this is so important. And it's, to me, it's fascinating stuff. I was always that kid. I liked hanging out in the cemeteries. I hung out in the cemeteries because it was quiet, and I was a little weird. I always was a little bit weird. But I should have known early on that would have been the perfect job for me. It took me some trial and error to find my true calling in life. But here I am, and I have Ed to thank for that largely. So this is exciting. This is really cool, and our first podcast, gotta admit, a little bit nervous, but as we go, it's like, okay, I think we got this. We got it, indeed. While we apologize for the minor technical difficulties when Ed was accidentally cut off at the end, we hope there was still more than enough info to get to know Ed and me at least a little bit. We're sure we'll get to know one another even more as the show goes on. But in the meantime, please take a moment to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, and most importantly, YouTube, where we'll regularly be posting fresh content and starting new conversations. We'll soon be available on Spotify in an audio-only format, but for now, YouTube is the best way to check out our podcast. Don't forget to help us out by liking and subscribing, because remember, better death care takes a community. Thanks, and see you next time.